In Palestine, the Hamas resistance movement requested support from the international community to stop Israel's crimes and to provide the necessary aid to the Gaza Strip. The Russian government reaffirmed its goodwill to negotiate for the peace process with Ukraine. And in France, several cities witnessed massive demonstrations calling for a new law to protect women and minors who suffer from any form of sexual violence. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from TeleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Palestine, the Hamas resistance movement requested support from the international community to stop Israel's crimes and to provide the necessary aid to the Gaza Strip. Local media reported that the spokesperson of Hamas issued statements regarding the latest political developments and the war that has been taking place in Gaza since October 7, 2023. In this sense, the Hamas representative mentioned that the conflict has been going on for 415 consecutive days, being one of the cruelest wars in contemporary history, noting that the lack of action by the Arab and Islamic countries has contributed to the conflict's prolongation. The authority further stressed that Israel has committed numerous heinous crimes in the Gaza Strip, including assassination, starvation, and obstructing the arrival of medical aid and supplies even in the winter. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees warned that the risk of drought and disease threatens the lives of residents of the Gaza Strip amid Israeli aggressions. UNRWA added that the drought in Gaza is due to the lack of fuel to operate the water wells, especially in the north of the Strip, which has been subjected to an escalation in the genocide for some 50 days. The United Nations agency denounced that some 70,000 Palestinians are struggling to obtain water, a basic human right that remains out of reach for many. The situation is made worse by the shortage of food and medical supplies due to the persistent Israeli genocide and the border blockades that prevent the entry of humanitarian aid. Israeli genocidal forces have besieged over 130,000 children younger than 10 years old for 50 days in northern Gaza, depriving them of water, food, medicine, and all possible humanitarian aid. Save the Children, leading independent organization, denounced so, and it has made repeated calls to notice the impending risk of famine in the area. The movement claimed they have been hampered to enter for 7 weeks. As a result, they have been unable to deliver the food packages prepared for 5,000 families, in addition to 725 hygiene kits and other supplies. Earlier, Save the Children could allocate aid with the support of local partners, but now all alternatives have been closed. The Israeli government preliminarily accepted a possible ceasefire agreement in Lebanon. The official Israeli Broadcasting Authority made the announcement after specifying that although Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to evaluate the proposal of a ceasefire put forward by the United States, the decision is not final. This comes in the context of a visit of the U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein, who gave a deadline to reach an agreement. The U.S. representative notified Israel that if it does not reach an agreement in the next few days, it will abandon the negotiations. Kursk province Governor Alexei Smirnov reported that Russian air forces repelled a new large-scale Ukrainian drone attack. The official further detailed that the authorities successfully neutralized 7 missiles and 7 UAVs. Kyiv wastes millions of dollars from U.S. and European citizens' taxes on attacks of this nature. All of them are aimed directly or indirectly against the civilian population, impacting vital services such as water, electricity, or fuel supply. supply. The vast majority of these attacks, labeled by the Russian government as terrorist attacks, are thwarted by the Russian Defense Forces. The Russian government reaffirmed its goodwill to negotiate for the peace process with Ukraine. The Russian spokesperson Dmitry Peskov asserted that his government has always been open to peace talks. Moreover, Peskov highlighted that President Vladimir Putin is ready to settle differences with Ukraine, but on his own terms. In this regard, members of the Federation Council assured a possible decline in allocating aid to Ukraine after Trump's victory, while legislators of the Duma said that the decision should be made by the Kremlin and not by the White House. Meanwhile, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, recently held a telephone conversation in which they discussed several issues, including the peace process with Ukraine and the readiness of the parties. In Germany, activists demand compensation from Ukraine for damage and loss of profit caused by the explosion of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. The most recent investigations hold Kyiv responsible for the attack carried out by Ukrainian divers and led by Valery Slalusby, then commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The organization stopped the sanctions, calls on the German government to suspend aid to Kyiv until the government of President Volodymyr Zelensky honors the compensation payments. They claimed that the attack was directed specially against Germany, and they also denounced the United States' involvement. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United Nations Children's Fund warned on Sunday of the unprecedented spike in violence affecting children and adolescents in Haiti. In less than a year, the recruitment of minors by criminal groups has increased by 70%. The agency's studies estimate that half of the criminal groups are made up of minors. The plans imposed by the United States on the Caribbean nation have aggravated violence, generalized poverty, lack of access to education, and the collapse of basic services. According to the UNICEF report, all these causes have fueled the wave of violence and helplessness of Haitian minors. In Mexico, the Chamber of Senators announced that over 10,000 people have registered to participate in the judicial elections scheduled for 2025 in the country. The upper house informed in a communique the postulation of candidacies via email was enabled until the deadline expired. Likewise, the evaluation committee of the different public bodies will assess each aspirant to partake in the elections scheduled for June 1st, 2025. In this sense, the elections esteemed for the judicial reform, in which citizens will elect by popular vote 9 ministers of the Supreme Court of Justice, 5 magistrates of the Court of Judicial Discipline, 2 of the Superior Chamber of the Electoral Court of the Judicial Power, 15 of the regional courts, 464 of the circuit courts, and 386 district judges.
More than 9,000 young people throughout the country have registered in the executive branch alone. And want to be honest judges, magistrates, honest ministers. That is the fourth transformation. It has principles and causes that we must never betray.
Venezuela's parliament holds an intensive information and training session ahead of the elections for judges of the peace to be held on December 15th to consolidate the communal government scheme. The legislators have been deployed across the nation to keep posted the already organized communes about the historical process. In addition, the period for the nominations of judges will be held from Monday through Thursday, November 28th. The electoral commissions of the 5,240 140 communal circuits in the country will be responsible for receiving the applications and evaluating the suitability of the candidates in accordance with the law. In Ecuador, authorities registered a historic record high of more than 76,000 hectares burned so far in 2024 by forest fires. The National Risk Management Secretariat reports that there are currently 13 active fires in 5 provinces. The province of Loja is the most affected so far, with 32,958 hectares destroyed, including areas of the Podocarpus National Park. The Ecuadorian Air Force discharged 19,000 liters of water as part of the firefighting efforts, in which more than 300 firefighters and 200 volunteers are participating. Authorities added that so far this year, forest fires have left 7 people injured, 235 victims, and 317 people affected. Global media outlets reported that U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is preparing an executive order aimed at expelling transgender soldiers from the military. The outlets unfolded that the GOP will sign the order on his first day in office. As a result, at least 15,000 soldiers will be discharged from the U.S. Army, alleging they are unfit for duty. The president-elect made that decision long before, as he had criticized the Army's progressive practices, saying they are more focused on inclusion than on combat planning. Earlier, Trump prevented transgender people from joining the military on his first term, but by that time, he allowed those already serving to keep their posts. In Brazil, thousands of revelers gathered alongside Copacabana Beach for Rio de Janeiro's annual Pride Parade on Sunday. Let's see.
Rainbow-colored flags, towels, and fans abounded among the crowd, mostly made up of young people who danced and sang along to music blaring from speakers. While the atmosphere was festive, some spoke of the threat of violence LGBTQ plus people face in Brazil. At least 230 LGBTQ plus Brazilians were victims of violent deaths in 2023, according to the umbrella watchdog Group Observatory of LGBTQ plus deaths and violence in Brazil. And more trans people were murdered in Brazil last year than in any other country, according to Transgender Europe, a network of global nonprofits that tracks the data. Despite the violence and rejection to which they are still subjected, LGBTQ plus communities continue to fight for the right to be respected, to have a family, or simply to have a life.
We all have the right to be who we want to be. It's important that people understand that. We're here to raise awareness, to make people aware that this is our right, everyone's right, to be who we want to be, to choose who we want to be, to have a life, to have a family. And that's what I'm here for sure, carrying the flag.
One of the themes of this year's Pride March was sustainability. Environmental justice will only be possible with racial and social justice, gender equality, and sexual diversity. Brazil has faced a series of environmental catastrophes this year, including record drought in the Amazon rainforest, floods in the southern Rio Grande do Sul state, and wildfires across the country.
A second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Cuba stretched once again a hand of peace and reconciliation to the world within the framework of the 11th plenary session of the International Parliament for Tolerance and Peace held in Cambodia in Southeast Asia. The plenary session was founded in 2017 as a mechanism to promote the culture of peace and fight off discrimination and extreme violence, while the International Parliament is made up of 58 delegations representing parliaments of different global regions. On the 11th plenary session, the Cuban delegation appreciated the support of the meeting in the struggle against the inhumane U.S. blockade. Likewise, the Cuban representatives reaffirmed their commitment to peace, tolerance, and reconciliation grounded in ethics, humanism, and dignity of the Cuban Revolution.
I take this opportunity to express once again Cuba's steadfast will to continue expanding and diversifying its relations on the grounds of dialogue, respect for sovereignty, and peace among all nations. On behalf of the Cuban people, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude for the permanent and unwavering support in the struggle of our country and the world for putting an end to the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States of America.
In Pakistan, thousands of supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan marched demanding his release despite heavy security measures in Islamabad. The national march, called by the pro-freedom movement, which has overcome attempts to cordon off several cities, continues sparking violent clashes with the security forces. The target is Islamabad, which, despite keeping its central zone blockaded, has not been able to stop thousands of citizens that continue advancing in violent clashes with the forces of law and order. Protesters are demanding the release of Khan, whose arrest last year triggered widespread rallies and led to a political crisis in Pakistan. In France, several cities witnessed massive demonstrations calling for a new law to protect women and minors who suffer from any form of sexual violence. France registered worrying rates of gender violence in the year 2023. At least 93 women were victims of femicide. Protesters demand that the new legislation include the notion of consent, inspired by the case of Giselle Pelicot, who was drugged by her husband to be raped by dozens of men, under the motto that rapists are the ones who should be feeling ashamed. Pelicot confronted the perpetrators in a trial, inspiring thousands of women and the urgent revision of laws. In France, a woman is raped every 6 minutes and only 0.5% result in a conviction for the aggressor. In Lithuania, a Boeing 737 cargo aircraft crashed Monday into a residential building nearby the Vilnius airport. Local authorities detailed that the shipping company DHL was in charge of the cargo jet. The plane took off from Germany, crashing into a building in Vilnius minutes before reaching the airport. The Spanish-born pilot died in the incident, while the other two crew members were rushed for medical assistance. The building hit by the crash had minor damages and no injuries were reported, but everyone was evacuated for safety. In Italy, the Fontana di Trevi is the most famous fountain in the Mediterranean country and one of the most emblematic monuments in Europe. Let's see some details.
The Fontana di Trevi is located in the district of Trevi, in Rome, the capital of Italy. It is a fountain of Baroque style that began to be built in the year 1732. But due to several complications, it was finished 30 years later in 1762, and in its design, many architects and sculptors of the time participated. The fountain is located on the facade of the Palazzo Pali, and it is 20 meters wide and 26 meters high. It is said, according to documents of the time, that after the fountain was built, it had the best tasting water in all of Rome. For centuries, locals and tourists, even the Vatican authorities used to drink its water, but this practice was prohibited in 1961. The main artistic theme that composes the Fontana di Trevi is the sea. In the center, there is the statue of the Titan Oceano, framed by columns. In the lower part, the representation of a rocky cliff, and on it, two winged horses that are known as agitated and placid, representing the two states of the sea. On the sides of the ocean, the statues of abundance on the right side and of healthiness on the left side. The fountain is accompanied by a plaza that allows visitors to appreciate it, and has become an icon of Baroque architecture today. In 1954, the film Three Coins in the Fountain was released, and since then, tourists from all over the world have the habit of throwing coins into the fountain, from which approximately 1 million euros are extracted every year, and since 2007, the money is used for the conservation of the fountain or for charitable purposes. Last May 21st, some climate change activists dyed its waters black to demand a halt to the use of fossil fuels. The site, however, was not permanently damaged. The Trevi Fountain, together with the Historic Center of Rome, are recognized as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1980.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.